Climate assessment was just a hand, and I'm ready to burst. It's deep into the stratigraphy. We're delighted to have Robert Chapel here today, and thank him so much for coming and for accepting our invitation, for driving so far to be with us. Right? Robert has travelled. He grew up travelled to Belfast. He grew up though in Galway, in Scotland, and achieved his archaeological degrees, BA in '91 and his MA in '98 from UCG in '98. Okay. He's been a commercial field archaeologist for over 20 years, and he's been a member of the Historic Monuments Council and the Joint Committee for Industrial Heritage. And currently, his research interests include the Irish radiocarbon determination a chronological dates project. And if you like him on Facebook, you'll also see he's an extremely active blogger on all things archaeological to do with heritage or anything. Yeah? Robert, listen, thanks very much for coming. Thanks very much indeed. Swastika.
First of all, thank you to the Department and the Society for inviting me. I will jump at any chance to come to Sligo. I love the countryside around here. And to talk to you about one of my favourite subjects, swastikas, is even better. So today's talk is Swastika in Irish Art and Archaeology, origins, associations, and general decorations, because I couldn't really think of a snappier title. So what I'm going to start with is a dedication. Professor Etienne Wren, the late Professor Etienne Wren, taught me when I was a student, and he used to give a lecture on the swastika in Irish art. And with his passing, I've chosen to revive it, and this is based on some of his research and some of my own. Now, before we get any further, I'm going to just acknowledge that swastikas are a sensitive topic. If you thought you were coming here to hear me talk about swastikas without actually showing images of them, you're in the wrong place. Why the picture of Roy Rogers? Well, because it's a trigger warning. So, also disclaimer, like Indy, I hate Nazis, so, and I'm not apologizing. I also will use any cultural reference I can without saying Illinois Nazis. So let's just, what's the first thing that most people think of when they talk about swastikas? They go, oh, well, that's a Nazi symbol. And yeah, sure, these are the images that for a lot of people you think of when you say swastika. If you know a little bit more about swastikas, you'll probably say, oh, it's an Indian symbol. And that, for a lot of people, is where it goes. Just to briefly cover some of the origins, the word swastika comes from swastika in Sanskrit, and it's generally taken to mean a lucky or an auspicious object. And in its original context, or in its Eastern context, in a modern time, it's interpreted as that as a sun symbol and a bringer of good fortune. I'm not going to give you all the answers to everything. In a lot of cases, I don't have those answers. I want to pick out some things as we go and ask you to draw conclusions and notice things between them. The one thing I would say is a lot of this what we're talking about today is about context. These swastikas that you see on this shrine are perfectly acceptable in their way. But a hand-drawn swastika on the side of a mosque, a synagogue, or a church is a totally different thing. Same symbol, but different meanings. Also need to deal with, as kind of a bit of preamble here, swastika reclaimers. So you've got people from the Indian subcontinent that are reacting to the Nazi use of the symbol and go, actually, this belongs to us. It has a different meaning. Obviously, there are the neo-Nazis, and then there's the Raelian movement. They're a UFO-believing neo-religion, and they're generally pretty easy to distinguish from each other, with, I would suggest, the exception of this gentleman down here in the bottom right-hand corner. If you do an internet search on swastikas, you'll find pictures of him. He is a Learn to Love the Swastika campaigner, and he makes it very clear that he is not, in fact, a Nazi or a neo-Nazi. I would put it to you, though, that if you have a shaven head, slightly maniacal look in your eye, you're covered in swastika tattoos, and one of them is in your armpit, so that only really giving a Nazi salute can show it to its full glory, people are going to think you're a Nazi. There is a fourth category. There's me. I don't want to bring it back, whatever that means. I don't want to disassociate it from the Nazi war crimes, But I do want to give an understanding of its use in general, but also its Irish uses. Another little bit of preamble is one thing you always hear about swastikas. Oh, there's good swastikas and bad swastikas. So you hear that there's the ones that go clockwise, and then there's one that goes anti-clockwise that are bad. The flat ones are supposed to be Hindus, the Nazi ones are the perversion, they're upright. Well, folks, nothing's as simple as that. The Nazis use both. The Hindus do generally, usage does tend to be flatter, but again, it's not universally so. And also, this directionality isn't constant either. So you can see that in some of the ones from India, and in this image that they go in both directions. So that's all the various preambles over. And to look at some of the meanings, William Wakeman, one of Ireland's premier antiquarians of the 19th century, described it as an emblem of power, good fortune, and he describes it as an allusion to the course of the sun, and is derived from the pagan sun wheel. And this is kind of one thing I want to highlight immediately. We're going to be talking about images of sun. And usually it's said that there's archaeological evidence going back to at least the late Bronze Age. And you can find that. This is from Villanova house urn in Este in northern Italy. So that period, like 1500 BC, and you've got this matchstick horse that is followed by this rather convoluted looking swastika. Just to show that it's not unusual, those type of swastikas turn up on other urns. They're relatively familiar. Now the same arrangement of swastika with horse, and again, I'm going to just highlight here, horses come into this again and again and again. This turns up in an Anglo-Saxon cremation urn from like 1,000 years later. So there are some interesting things here with the swastika, the horse. It's a sun symbol, there's a horse, which brings us to the sun chariot from Trondheim in Denmark. And it's generally dated to that period, like early to middle Bronze Age, about 1800 to 1600 BC. And it's usually interpreted as this version of the sun being drawn across the skies in a chariot. And in that sense, you have the relationships to Apollo, to Helios, to Sol. And again, these ideas of mythologies being parallel to each other and using similar symbols, sometimes in the same ways. The earliest version I can find is this particular one from Ukraine. It's Epigraphetium. It's about 10,000 BC, and it's a little bird, and we're looking at the underside of it here. And the English language references to this describe the decoration you can see here on the base as being swastika-like. And it was found with a number of phallic objects. And these phallic objects are really popular in archaeological terms. And I just kind of want to bring this, again, another thread that I want to draw into this canvas is phallic objects are generally interpreted in archaeological terms as being life, progress, positive symbols. And are we seeing the same here with this association between the bird and the swastika, that it too is a life symbol, and that it may actually have a long currency as such? Oops, I shouldn't have done that. Other early examples, you understand, and please take this the right way, that in doing research for this, I spend a lot of time on far-right websites. And when I give this lecture in the US, I always thank the NSA for not deporting me. This particular image turns up on neo-Nazi sites all over the place. They love it because it shows how ancient their twisted ideas are. And this is part of what's called the Vinca script. It's an undeciphered photo writing. And they go, oh look, Aryans going back 6,000 and 5,000 BC. Without ever acknowledging that this is just one of a multitude of undeciphered symbols. So don't just pick on the swastika to understand there are many other things going on here as well. And again, this is kind of another theme. When I give this lecture, it's, like today, not a bad attendance, but I could stand up and do lectures on any other aspect of, say, early Christian art, and not as many people would turn up. But you put the word swastika into the title, and there's, because of our modern association with it, it draws people in. And that's kind of one of the things I was kind of, again, it's a recurring theme. And this is, again, you see, this is a Hoyuk in Anatolia, which nobody other than specialists would really be interested in. It's a fantastic series of royal grades, and 3rd millennium BC, and one of these starting points from our series of these metal standards. Nobody's exactly sure what they are. The one you see on the left, in our terms, doesn't really attract a lot of attention. It's just a lattice work. The one in the middle, on the other hand, we see a swastika, and it's kind of our intent, I certainly mine, because it's a research area of mine, are suddenly much more interesting. And again, this is again how we're drawn to this one particular symbol. Other ones, Clymore in West Yorkshire, believed to be Neolithic or Bronze Age in date. I would point out that if you go up there, and I've heard stories of this, that people have gone up there and taken photographs of this very, very clear swastika here, kind of a laburo type, with these lobed ends. And that's great, except that this is a 19th century carving of the actual Bronze Age one just on the next rock over. I've heard stories of people going up there and absolutely missing the other one. Other early examples, I'm going to be coming back to Heinrich Schliemann. He found a number of, and actually lots and lots, of swastikas in his excavations at Troy. Just want to, again, just very briefly touch on the idea that, again, there are swastikas that have different meanings in other parts of the world. You find them in Korea, China, Japan, and these are of Buddhist origin. Changes in Japan because of an influx or expected influx of tourists for the Rugby World Cup and the forthcoming Summer Olympics. The manji symbol that is used to highlight where a Buddhist temple is being changed on tourist maps because of that Nazi association to Westerners. It's also found in Africa and North America. The African ones, I don't honestly know an awful lot about. They're very hard to find information on. The US ones are frequently attributed to it being a traditional part of Native American iconography. It's not. There are different types of swastika-like emblems, but basically those were deliberately introduced into their design repertoire in the 19th century for, we'll see here, like rugs and bowls to feed the tourist market. And we'll explain why in the 19th century and onwards that swastikas became very, very popular. Okay, back to core archaeology. The Celts. Vincent McGaw, who was never short of a complicated way of saying something, described the swastika as another common Hallstatt takeover from the Transalpine repertoire, which just goes to prove to you that academic archaeologists are deliberately trying to exclude people that don't quite get all their references. What this is really, I showed you the house urns from northern Italy. Basically, you're seeing exactly the same type of swastikas, like here in the top right-hand corner, as you saw on those house urns. So they made their way across the Alps, and they became tied up in the Celtic world. And you see various ones from the Hotdorf, Hohmeckel, and other places like that. The nice colourful one up here on the top, this was part of the fabric that draped. There was a large cauldron in the back of this reconstruction here of the grave of Hotdorf, and that was dedicated with, or decorated with swastikas. Again, Hohmeckel, about 6th century BC, silk decoration again, swastikas turn up on it. I love this particular one. This is Hallstatt, 5th century BC, and it's a bronze scabbard. Quite frequently, you see this little piece of the two characters holding the wheel, generally interpreted as a sun wheel. What you don't often see is, and it's still quite hard to see it, are these running lines of decoration on either side. You look at them one way, and they're kind of L-shaped. If anybody still plays Tetris, I know it kind of dates me, but you look at it one way, and it's these like zigzag pieces of Tetris. You look at it another way, and there are two lines crossing that form a swastika. And again, this is something I'm going to come back to about this visual games that can be played with swastikas. So what we have is a scabbard that has a sun symbol at the center, and on either side you're getting swastikas, which are themselves sun symbols, positive symbols, good fortune, good luck. And not quite the same, but you're getting some of those series of decorations in miniature on the edge of the sun wheel. A Latin scabbard. I'm going to come back to this idea that there are some swastikas that are actually, well, do you see the swastika or do you see the L? And so this is a swastika that's essentially composed of L shapes. In Greek, it's called a gamidion, gamma being L. The famous Kermaria stone from Brittany, again, 4th century BC, and top left image there, very clearly swastika. But the others are all divided into 4s as well, so there are elements of that we need to think about. Other Celtic ones, the famous Clyn carried back, which is a wonderful sight just to be able to say. And one of the things that came from it is what's described as either a horn cap or a yoke terminal. So probably coming from, say, if it's a horn terminal down here at the end of this reconstructed chariot, or maybe up here or here. And you see it very clearly that the swastika is comprised of a central square with 4 other squares that are linked together. And we see exactly the same. Go to the British Museum and see this in person. It is one of the most beautiful pieces. It's the Battersea Shield, about 350 to 50 BC. And if you go, where are the swastikas on that? You need to get in close. Originally there would have been 27 of them, and they're exactly the same. Central squares with the arms then formed of more squares. This is a helmet from Le Bourgmier in France. It's the barreau type, a tall pointed helmet, and it's from a chariot burial. So again, just looking back, remember horses, chariots, swastikas. If you can't see the swastika, among my many, many talents is, what do you call it? That terrible thing on Microsoft Word, Paint. So yes, so there we have the gamidion highlighted. Now you can start to see the entire helmet is decorated with a running frieze of swastikas. And again, remember, this is a chariot burial, and it's coming back to these old ideas with the sun, with the horse, with good luck, all things tied together. Again, another great sight to be able to say in public, wet wine slack in Yorkshire. This really just rolls off the tongue. And here we have this beautiful chariot burial, and this piece is kept in the British Museum. And again, you can see there are a series of T shapes that go together to form a swastika on this bridle. And again, bridle, horse, swastika. I keep making those links. It's known in the Greek and Roman worlds, associated with Diana as the goddess of the hunt. And you see this guy here, this is from this wonderful site, Piazza Armerina in Sicily, about 4th century AD, and you see this wonderful mosaic where he has a swastika associated with Diana on the hunt, on a hunting scene. Greeks had it too, and you see this one here is Artemis as mistress of the animals, about 650 BC. More Roman stuff, the famous treasure of Charus, again another thing that's really worth seeing up close in the British Museum. Dates around 230–260 AD, and it is one of the most complete table surfaces to survive from antiquity. And on one of the pieces we have here, in the yellow, that black sulfide, a little swastika. It's not unique, and that's the important thing here. While there are not very many of those large table surfaces that survive, other bowls do, around the same date, that kind of mid-3rd century or so, 2nd, 3rd century, with swastikas clearly in the center of them. If you think of what is the purpose of a lot of these bowls, and it's to show the wealth of the house, to show the food, and the good luck, and that you're able to entertain. So again, a swastika associated with the good things in life and hospitality. So we were seeing it there in that. Basically, actually, the Romans would stick a swastika on just about anything. So we have it on various types of mosaics, belt fittings, brooches, different types of architecture. The swastikas were really common amongst them. Indeed, same with the Anglo-Saxons. They swastika again used there, and you can read these yourself. Vikings. This is the famous Thurmuth sword, and it's a wonderfully interesting artifact in its own right. Unfortunately, was cleaned using acid, so we can't actually go back and reread and reinterpret George Stephen's original translation. But he thought that what he saw basically translates as Thormouth, with the swastika meaning Thor, thunder. So as a person named Thormouth owns me. An interesting one, but again, not the only one of its kind. So this is a Viking sword, provenance unknown, thought to be about 9th or 10th century. And so you can clearly see this frieze of swastikas as they originally have been in silver wire on the hilts and, the crossguard and the pommel. Now, that's just a flying visit through everything. There's so much more you can talk about the background to it. But I want to get to our real meat, and that's the Irish material. But before we do, just a little couple of recaps. I want you to really understand that it's used over a long period of time by a wide range of peoples and probably signified a variety of different meanings. So let's take a look at some Irish stuff. This is an old stone from Aglish, County Kerry. Professor Wren, in his dating of it, reckoned it was 5th or 6th century. More recently, work by Swift says it's a little bit later, about 6th or 7th century. And you can clearly see from the photograph and the drawing, we have two swastikas on either side of a spear, a gnomon of some description. It's actually quite similar in some respects to, this is another Ogham stone. This is from Inishviklon in County Kerry, the island that was famously owned by Charlie Haughey. And again, similar sort of date, 6th or 7th century. And another thing I want to pick out here is that when you look at this, you see the four sides in the top right here. And there are 4 different crosses. And that was exciting. And the one on ironically, on the far right is the one with the expanded terminals that makes it look like a swastika. And the question here is turning this back to the swastika being, in a Christian context, a different type of cross. These are some beautiful ones from Glencar in County Kerry. And again, we see different types of swastikas, some with very straight arms, some with curving arms, and I think this is a particularly beautiful image, where you see that the swastika on the shoulder of the cross slab. One from Ferty, County was considerably a little bit later, 9th to 11th century AD. The guy that's Albert Siggins, who originally founded and published this, he was of the opinion that the swastika worked in the same way as the Chi-Rho symbol in the early Christian art, that you had that XP, or what looks like XP is actually Chi-Rho, and they're the first letters of Christ's name in Greek, and that you can essentially use that. You see a swastika and you must interpret it as the name of Christ. And again, coming back to these same things. This is Termon's Church Island on the Iveragh Peninsula. I include this one just to say that, look, I'm big into swastikas. I see them kind of everywhere. But I think you can go too far, because they describe this one as a debased form of swastika motif at the crossing of the shaft and arms. Good luck to you. I think you're maybe pushing the boat out a little too far with that one. But I include it because it is considered by some. I'm in Sligo, and I don't have a photograph of this one. It's in the literature, this is all I got on it. It's in Killar. It's a graveyard in Sligo. And it's described as a piece of old red sandstone, but the important thing here is that it has 4 D-shaped projections, and the top of each is decorated with a swastika. If any of you on your travels find a photograph of this, I would be eternally grateful to be able to add it to this. And my apologies, you need to talk to me in Sligo and not having a photograph of it. Staying with Sligo, there's the famous one from St. Bridget's Well in Cliffany. And this one, we have photograph, drawing, and a modern reproduction. If you actually go looking for this one on the internet, you'll find a rather long and involved forum discussion by a woman that misunderstood that the reproduction wasn't something new and thought that it was some politically correct New Age thing and was actually terribly offended by it. And again, this is kind of something you have to weave into these understandings about how we deal with swastikas, even in an academic sense, that there's still a lot of modern associations with it that we can't treat it too flippantly. Now, this is St. Bridget's Well, which brings us on to St. Bridget. And her feast day, first day of February, first day of spring, and I wanted to incorporate again that idea of that beginning of spring. It's that renewal of life after death that you can see in a way of kind of a world resurrection and paralleled with resurrection in the Christian sense. And as we all know, there's this idea that Bridget as a Christian saint may just be a Celtic goddess dressed up as a Christian nun. Of course, if you're eagle-eyed, you'll already have seen the swastikas involved here, because a lot of people see the Bridget's crosses as a form of swastika. So, to an Irish audience, you don't really need a lot of introduction to this. These are distinctive crosses associated with St. Bridget's. They're usually made of rushes or straw. The kindest I can say is they're of uncertain antiquity. We don't have them going back into deep archaeology, deep history. I would also just note that there's a three-legged form of Bridget's cross. There's a three-legged form of swastika. I would note that it's out there, and I won't be dealing with it any further than that. For example, you see it in the Manx symbol of the three legs. It's out there. It's a different field of study into itself, but it is there. Different people have different opinions about St. Bridget's cross. Thomas Mason writing some years ago on it called it a Christianized swastika and associated with sun worship and agricultural fertility. And then we're getting back to the cross, to the swastika being associated again with fertility, possibly going back to those ideas of the Epic one associated with phallic symbols, again, fertility symbols. The late Estim Evans, who wrote so much on Irish folklife, believed that the Bridget's crosses were magic symbols of suns, and again, that idea of the connection between swastikas and suns. Etienne, in his own writing about this, who was worse than me for seeing swastikas everywhere, he actually in this case believed that it says as most likely to be fortuitous as intentional. As he would have said himself, you pays your money, you take your choice. So, in early Christian Ireland, most of the ones I've been showing you are on cross slabs, and they're difficult to date. You're done by about 6th to 11th century. They're almost entirely absent from the high cross tradition, with the exception of this one from Kiltiernan, County Kilkenny, and it's the only one. In fact, it's part of the Henny group, which puts it in the earlier part of the high cross tradition, about 8th or 9th century. And you can see two swastikas here on the left and right arms. A bit more difficult to see on the photograph itself. But these are not just in stonework. This, you don't need my title here to show you that this is the Book of Lindisfarne. Very well known Eastern manuscript, this one dating around 700 AD. And if you're looking for the swastikas, well, there's two here, one going one way, one going the other, and there's two on the other side of the page going in different directions. This one I particularly like. This is a bone knife handle from Cathedral Hill in County Armagh. Look closely on the photograph and the drawing, and you'll see that it's decorated with 4 different swastikas. Based on the material that was discovered with, it's dated broadly to the 5th to the 10th century. I like this because it is exactly the type of thing that is a fairly rare survival. And in looking at the swastikas, I just wonder if you could not parallel it with the famous cheese press that came up from Clay and Fermanagh. It dates roughly the same time, 7th to 10th century. In this case, it's decorated with an incised cross. Now, the reason I'm pulling these two apparently different, very different objects together is that one of the things that's been talked about with the cheese press is why do you get this Christian symbol on a very secular site doing a secular job? And one of the things that the excavators at Drumclay have been tossing around as an idea is that, is it a form of using the Christian cross symbol to bring luck and to making cheese? Now, this seems a bit weird until you start to realize that there's a vast amount of folklore associated with the making of cheese and dairying in general. Similarly, we have an awful lot of traditional folklore suggested about knives. For example, you should never buy a knife or a sword or blade of any description for somebody else as a gift, because the tradition is that the sharpness of the blade will sever the friendship. So if you give something as a gift of a knife, there should be something, even a token, given back in return. With regard to butter and cheese making, my late grandmother, when we were children, would never allow us into the house if she was churning butter without us churning the butter too. Otherwise, you took the good luck with you. So I'm wondering, are there kind of folkloric things that are coming into here, that these are protective symbols? This is a beautiful, beautiful thing. This is St. Patrick's Bell Shrine, basically late 11th, early 12th century, famous for being an Irish object decorated in the Viking urna style. If I've taught you well, by this stage you're already looking for the swastikas up there. And it's kind of unfair because I've cheated you. They're not on that side. If you still can't see them, first of all, I want you to see the T-shapes, the tau shapes. And they're in this grill, and they're accompanied by equal-armed Greek crosses. And you flip your eyes and you go the other way, and there we are, Mr. Master of MS Paint, who highlight for you all those swastikas. So again, your eyes are playing tricks. You look at it one way, it's regular Greek crosses and T-shapes. You look at it the other way, it's swastikas. So staying with early Christian Ireland, I'm going to do the logical thing and bring you to Norway. This is the famous Oseberg ship burial. Excavated at the beginning of the 20th century. We know from a number of sources that it's thought to have been buried around 834 AD, but the ship and its contents are in fact much older. So I want to bring you to this guy. This is the Buddha bucket, and he dates late 7th century AD, so basically quite a bit older than the 9th century. And it's thought that this is a copper alloy and Cosone enamel character is thought to be of Irish manufacture. Because of the way his legs are crossed, it's sometimes compared to a Buddha in the lotus position, though it's probably more likely to be related to images of this of Celtic god like Cernunnos. Some of the decoration on this guy can be paralleled with St. Matthew in the Book of Durrow. So again, that kind of 650, 700 period around, probably thing. Right? You've seen the swastika, right? We've seen them there. There are 4 of them, and they're turning in opposite direction. And again, they're made from those interlocking T-shapes. Look at it one way, it's a T. Look at it the other way, it's a swastika. I particularly love this picture because this is when you get to look down on the top of the guy's head, and you see he's just got the most mad center parting. A hairstyle before its time. Other ones considered to be, at least possibly, of Irish manufacture, also from Norway. This is a hanging road escutcheon, again 8th to 9th century AD. And the same idea, this combination of, are they T-shapes, or is it a swastika? This is the Ardagh hoard. This is one of the most beautiful, beautiful items I have ever seen in any museum anywhere in the world. It has got possibly the most stereotypical Irish story of how it was found. 2 boys out digging potatoes. It just smacks of racism. So the chalice itself was found as part of a hoard. We reckon that the chalice was made around the 8th century, but it was all deposited sometime around or after 900 AD. And it is simply one of the finest pieces. Every time I go to the museum in Dublin, I just lose myself in looking into the filigree of this. All these years in archaeology, and this still instills so much joy and wonder in me, and I always find something new in it. Even the underside, even the base is heavily decorated. And the foot ring has 8 curving panels separated by studs, and we kind of know where we're going at this stage, don't we? So, and there are 2 of these that have this running set of 18 squares made up of this, again, combination of T-shapes and swastikas. See the T-shapes, see the swastikas, that the eyes flick back and forth between them. Now, you go onto the internet, do even the most basic search for varieties of cross. You'll get the usual ones, the long Latin cross, the X-shaped cross, St. Andrew's cross. And of course you will get the swastika as a type of cross, but also you got to remember those T-shapes. They're not just T-shapes, they are in fact a type of cross, tau crosses, also known as the cross of St. Anthony. And we have a number freestanding in the Irish landscape. It is difficult to get out to the one on the right. This is Tory Island, but it is well worth. I was out there in about 1991, and I spent 3 hours getting sick over the side of the boat on the way out, and a similar amount on the way back. Corofin, County Clare is much easier to get to, and it is also a spectacular Tau cross. But when we're talking about those type of crosses, we do tend to forget about all these other ones that are in the early medieval artistic repertoire. And I think it's kind of fill in the blanks. Any Dylan fans in the audience? He not busy being born? Wow, you're all so young. Maybe Shakespeare, some sort of classical education. To be or not? Oh, okay. And for the religious ones, in the beginning was?
The Word.
The Word. Be careful. The first time I gave this lecture, I realized that actually kind of charts in descending in order my preferences in life. Sort of Dylan is the most important thing, Shakespeare, then the Bible. But what I'm getting at here is, given that kind of little rubric of, if you see the Tau cross, should you be thinking of the swastika? Two symbols within one hidden within the other. Maybe it kind of goes the other way, as an optical illusion. The one here at the top is famously known as Rubens' vase or vase, and they are bistatal two-dimensional forms. Look at it one way, you see the vase. Look at it the other way, let your eye flip between the two, and you see the two faces facing each other. Like the lady on the bottom left, look at it one way, and it's a young woman looking over her shoulder. Looking another way, it's an older lady with her head bowed down. So should we be looking to see the swastika and thinking of Tau? So again, this idea of two shapes interlocked within one. The swastika, like I said, I don't have all the answers to this. I'm going to let you take this one away. So generally, and certainly when Etienne wrote about this, his opinion was that the swastika declines in Irish use basically concurrent with Viking raiding. So the first raids happened on Lambay Island, 795 AD. Basically after that, as far as he was concerned, no more swastikas. But we do have St. Patrick's Bell Shrine that kind of sits right in the middle of that. So there are things to be taken account of here. When you visualize the Vikings as just this plundering lot, it's easy to think that, well, if they turn up with swords that have swastikas on them, maybe you're not going to be as keen on the symbol in the future. I think the more finds that we encounter and the more closely dated swastikas we get, the more that picture is going to erode and become much more subtle. Basically, one way or another, the swastika disappears out of Irish art until about the 15th century. This is one of the rare occurrences. It turns out it's a mason's mark in Ballinturber Abbey. In this picture, it's kind of hard to see, but it's just up there. And this kind of, again, the sort of Agamidian style of four joined together rough L shapes. This is one of the most beautiful, wonderful medieval tombs, or late medieval tombs I know on this island. This is the McMahon tomb in Ennis Friary. Traditionally believed to have been erected by Warne Green for her husband. Dates generally 1460 to 1470, and it is wonderful. Any of you who are old enough, are of that generation that visited this in the company of the late Etienne Rynn, will have known that he rejoiced in setting his students up in front of the carvings of the 12 apostles and going, based on the visual clues, tell me who's who. The only one I could ever get was this one with the Saltire cross as being St. Andrew. Unfortunately, the rest of them were kind of unknown to me. But there's a narrative in the rest of the tomb. So what I want to show here is just very quickly, from the left-hand side is the arrest of Christ. The other photographs I've included here, these are Nottingham alabasters. This tomb is considered to be a copy of in local limestone. So you go from the arrest of Christ, to the flagellation, the crucifixion, the entombment of Christ, that I don't think is really based on a Nottingham alabaster. I think it's something from a more German influence, again, around the same sort of time. And then we get to the resurrection. And this one actually includes two Nottingham alabasters. This one, because the bottom, the soldier outside the tomb actually always reminds me of the Tin Man, or sorry, the Scarecrow from The Wizard of Oz. But in all of them, you see the same general things happening. Christ is stepping forward from, Christ steps forward from the tomb, blessing the viewer with his right hand, and in his left hand holds a cross-topped shaft, and all of these show some form of pennant. The difference is that the one in Ennis has a swastika on that pennant. And the important thing to remember here is that this is a raised. It's not something that went along and incised it and cut it in later. This is actually part of the original design. Another late medieval one, 16th century or later, they're difficult to date. But again, if you're looking at this as a kind of a resurrection symbol, as we should be seeing associated with the McMahon tomb, where better to see it than in a graveyard? 19th and 20th century revival, Heinrich Schliemann, people debate whether or not he was anti-Semitic in the way we understand it today. He certainly had a lot of academic interest in the idea of the Aryan race that at the time he was writing had academic validity, not so much anymore, obviously. And he saw it as the finding of the swastikas as associated with ancient migrations of Proto-Indo-Europeans. And it's crazy to think about it, but this one set of discoveries was very, very popular and led to it becoming a big, big thing in Western Europe. So many people just put swastikas on everything. Rudyard Kipling, on the right-hand side here, changed his book covers to include swastikas, changed how he signed his name to include it. The middle one is a Boy Scouts of America, it's called a swastika badge. Different types, you can see Coca-Cola had a swastika pennant. The Canadians went nuts for different hockey teams called swastikas, the Edmonton, Windsor, and Fernie swastika. There was actually, to this day, a town in rural Canada called Swastika. How would you feel about getting a card through the post today that said, "May the Canadians bring happiness and big swastika"? Again, this is about how the symbol has changed. But you could go out and you could buy swastika clothing, you could buy swastika decorations, jewellery, which seems ridiculous to us, but at the time was really, really popular. And all fueled from Schliemann's discoveries in Troy. Famous Irish case, we have the swastika laundry, set up by John W. Britton in 1912, who refused to remove it after it became a Nazi symbol, only changing the design of the company logo to show that it was established in 1912, long before the Nazis ever took it. It turns out, again, in the religious context in Ireland in the 19th and 20th century, where you find these kind of swastika shapes in both Catholic and Protestant graveyards. This is Clonfert that I grew up quite close to. Fantastic site with a beautiful Romanesque doorway, these fantastic transitional windows in the back. And there are these 19th century stained glass windows that have St. Peter and St. Paul. And if you look closely above the heads of each of them, there are 4 swastikas, which I only learned about recently. And this is one of the reasons I love social media and the way that it allows people from different places to collaborate openly. So I was told about these. I was then told about the Carmelite Convent in Loughrea, County Galway. Again, this is like 7 miles from where I grew up. That has, again, it's hard to date this particular window, but we're thinking probably late 19th, early 20th century. And again, there are 4 swastikas in this very religious scene. Talking to, again, on Facebook with a number of people, Martin Gerald O'Brien from Sligo told me about this wonderful one in Sligo Cathedral, just down the road from here. And I'm just wondering what's going on. This is something that isn't particularly well known in the literature. I don't have a lot of answers. I'm just wondering, is this something within Irish Christianity, or maybe kind of European Christianity, that are using Schliemann's, the popularity of the swastika derived from Schliemann, but bringing it back into its older Christian use? And I'm just throwing that out there. I do not have an answer. But it's every time I said I'm doing this lecture, somebody brings me something new. So this is beautiful. If you're not familiar with it, you should be. This is called the Era page by a guy called Arthur Marnahan. It was intended to be to commemorate 1916 and War of Independence soldiers who died or killed. This incredibly intricate page that took him 2 years to page and draw. By the way, this is the Book of Resurrections. Laura na Hashteri, if I haven't mangled my Irish too badly. And what we see in the central panel here is the country name Era, but behind it, all these different names where the country rejuvenated itself, it resurrected itself from Juverna, Moira, Hibernia. Different people called this island different things. And right up to up the top, Arrow, and here we see that swastika again. And a very 20th century deliberate linking between the swastika and ideas of resurrection. I'm not going to go into this, but it would be intellectually dishonest if I didn't at least mention that while Schliemann himself may not have been an anti-Semite in the way we think of it today, his ideas were very much taken by anti-Semitic movements that had a racist agenda, and that became, and we were all familiar with that. So I'm going to mention it, but leave it there, and we know more about that. Instead, I'm going to mention a bit about Irish folklore. There's a tradition that the sun danced on Easter morning to celebrate Christ's resurrection. And these are a couple of clips of text from the Folklore Commission. And it said, the sun appeared to dance, and then at the bottom is a reflection of the sun danced on the wall of the ceiling. So this idea that the people put out a bucket of water to catch the sun, and that it reflected up onto a wall, and that you tapped the side of the bucket, and it produced this shimmery image. And another person said that it indicated that, for me, divine control was about and heaven was signaling. And one of the points that Etienne makes in his original publication of this is that the swastika as a sun symbol, and again, its connection to resurrection, and his suggestion is that the angled arms would be an obvious version of the waving rays any depictions of a dancing sun would have. I think that's slightly tenuous, but I think maybe there is something core there, that you have this, again, connection, resurrection, again and again and again, with the swastika in a Christian context. Dating Irish swastikas, Wakeman in the 19th century decided that they were introduced here long before the first Christian missionary. A decade later, he was thinking that it was in or soon after the time of St. Patrick. So, showing it forward. My favourite guy, Westropp, reckoned that they were brought back from the east by the Crusaders. Well, if we leave out the St. Bridget's crosses that we have no ancient evidence for, they're appearing on cross slabs, metalwork, and manuscripts in the 6th to the 9th centuries AD. But I really want to highlight the fact that this is as part of a wider early medieval, early Christian repertoire of symbols. They don't stand alone, they are part of it. And this kind of comes back to the fact that because of the Nazi usage of this symbol, I haven't tried, but I'm sure I could give a good go at a lecture on the use of the flabellum and the Chi-Rho symbol, but nobody would turn up for that. You put swastika in the title and people turn up for that. So there is that aspect of it too. They do seem to disappear, maybe contemporary with the Vikings, but again, we have to remember their usage on the St. Patrick's Bell Shrine. And essentially we have a slight reappearance in the 15th and 16th century that goes away. It seems to be another reintroduction, again, as part of that the pan-European fashion. And again, not surprisingly, we don't use all that many swastikas after the Nazis. In the same way that not many countries still call their children Adolf. With the exception of Spain, Adolphus is probably still quite a common name. But for the rest of the world, funnily enough, no. For non-Christian users, there's a different variety of particular meanings. So these can be the revolving wheel symbolizing the sun god. Again, for Christian users, that whole, essentially the pun between sun god and son of God can be invoked as well. So it can be interpreted as part of the lightning bolts for Buddha, Brahma in the east, and for Thor and Zeus in the west. And so there's, again, it returns as, you could call it a magical symbol or a religious symbol, but it's there. meanings for Christian users, again, Reverend Graves in the 19th century thought that it was a disguised cross. I think that's a ridiculous idea. If it's used as a cross, it's used as a cross. I don't think, certainly from, in an Irish context, there were no big purges like Diocletian or something like that against Christians at any time. I don't think it needs to be used in an Irish setting as that. And again, we have, is it a son symbol? Is it a son of God symbol, a Christ symbol? And again, that uses a resurrection symbol. And again, tying it back to the Christian liturgy, tying it back to ideas of salvation. The one thing I can say for certainty is that it probably meant different things to different people at different times. The swastika today is still in the East a powerful symbol of good. So here we have the Buddha with one on his chest. If your eyes have clicked sufficiently, you'll notice that the grill in the background is made up of T-shapes that lock together to form more swastikas. There are swastikas everywhere. The swastika in the West, of course, has a strong association with Nazis and neo-Nazis. And today it is just a shorthand for evil. You put a swastika on a character in a movie, and with the exception of Oskar Schindler, pretty much you're guaranteed they're going to be the bad guys. And full mark to anybody who can get all those references. There's actually enough of them that right, it's infiltrated into our politics. It's such a shorthand that you put swastikas there and you know the point you're making. I think this is kind of tied into what's called Godwin's law, or reductio ad Hitlerium. Anybody who disagrees with me on the internet is literally Hitler. It's a very seductive but dangerous route. In fact, actually, this slide was originally done before the recent American election, and I found there was actually enough to have a full slide of just Donald Trump ones. And that was kind of funny for a while, not so much now. So the question is a future for the swastika, and I think that in a summation like this, the last words do have to go to people like Freddie Noller, who was a Holocaust survivor, that the swastika was only used by the Nazis for about 40 years. It has, in our modern lives, has wiped out so much of that 10,000-year history. And I take a lot of validity from what he says, that for the Jewish people, the swastika is a symbol of fear, of suppression, and of extermination. It is a symbol that we will never, ever be able to change. And that, for me, carries a lot of weight. In reading around the subject, I came across a piece by an anonymous blogger from the Jewish Federation of St. Louis, who took this longer-term view, because swastikas do have a much, much longer history. It says, as hard as it is to imagine, there will of course come a time when the swastika will have as little visceral resonance to us as the Cossack's boot or the Inquisitor's robe does for us today. And that's what I've given this lecture before. That's where I went into this. I thought, well, guys, it's up to you. Where does this go? I can't end it there now, because in the last few months we've had Brexit, the election of Donald Trump, and the concurrent rise across Europe of the far right. And we're seeing swastikas used as a hate symbol again, both as a symbol of allegiance and a symbol to mark the other. These guys are bad, they're wrong, you put a swastika on them. This is funny, but there's a serious point here, that the swastika is being thrown around as a potent symbol. And for both people that are saying, you are bad and you're evil, I put a swastika on you to show that, but also people that are claiming it as part of a right-wing agenda. And I would have said that a few months ago Brexit couldn't happen. I thought that Donald Trump couldn't have been elected. And I would have thought that this type of far-right hatred would not come again in my lifetime. I was wrong. We're here in beautiful Sligo, and it's easy to think that this kind of crazy cannot happen here. I think that we have to be very careful about how we understand this as a symbol, and we have to be very aware that it is still a toxic symbol. We can talk about it in an academic sense here, but it does not absolve us of the right or the responsibility of taking it in a very, very serious way and understanding that it is a dangerous symbol. There are many ways that we can all stand up against this. I think that this is possibly one of the best ways that you can utilize Windows 95 to make a potent statement against the horrific use of this as a hate symbol. I will with that say thank you so much for listening.
That was absolutely fascinating. I think everybody in the audience thoroughly enjoyed that talk. Do we have any questions? Marion?
Yes, this is a bit of a naive question, but for Nazis, I mean, was the swastika a symbol of the Aryan race,
Yes.
or of ideas of resurrection, or
No, it was
simply the Aryan race?
It's quite a complex history. I can't claim to fully understand it. My understanding is that people like Schliemann found the swastikas that they believed connected we now call Proto-Indo-European languages to this mythical idea. It was an acceptable academic idea at the time to link modern European languages back to this, we now call Proto-Indo-European languages, but what they would call Aryan and used as an Aryan race. And it was only